Hello, everyone. This is Kathleen Newman from Maine Historical Society. Thank you for joining us for another virtual program. This is a discussion of the film Voices from the Barrens. We've got some of the film's directors, producers, and participants who are joining us this evening to share their stories and to talk a little bit about the making of the film. I'm going to introduce one of the directors and producers, and I'm going to ask them to introduce the rest of the panel here this evening. Hold on just a moment. Director Nancy Gertner is a visual artist and filmmaker working in experimental and documentary film. Her 2011 feature documentary, After I Picked the Fruit, was screened at various film festivals and received a Documentary Achievement Award at Southern Appalachian International Film Festival, as well as an honorable mention at the International Festival for Peace, Inspiration, and Equality. In other work, Nancy co-produced and was cinematographer for 330 Miles to Justice, which documented the 2003 New York farm workers march from Seneca Falls to Albany. And in 2019, she created a film history of the New York State Fair Labor Practices Act, which passed in 2019, giving farm workers in New York State labor rights. Nancy is active in human rights organizations in New York State, where she advocates for immigrant rights, farm worker justice, and indigenous peoples' rights. Voices from the Barrens, the film we're discussing this evening, was started from her research into agricultural labor across international borders. Also with us this evening is one of the film's regional producers, Camille Howard, who is a documentary filmmaker and producer based in Southern Maine. Her previous film, Yvonne's Kitchen, focused on lifestyle concerns connected with Parkinson's disease, and she was a semi-finalist for a Student Academy Award. And we also have a number of other folks from the filmmaking team and folks who are in the film joining us this evening. I'm going to ask Nancy to introduce the rest of the panel, and then we will get to your questions. So thank you all again so much for joining us.
I am really excited to introduce three very important people to the story of Voices from the Barrens: Native peoples, Blueberries, and sovereignty. First, I would like to say that we are thankful and grateful to the Wabanaki for giving us the privilege of working and filming their stories across the Wabanaki lands that extended from Maine through maritime Canada. We never made it to Newfoundland, but you never know. That's the next story. Anyway, we really are grateful to the entire group of Wabanaki people. So first I'd like to introduce Donald Saktoma, who is sitting on the screen there. He's an accomplished Native American author, filmmaker, historian, and politician. Recently, he has been appointed to the Advisory Council for the National Endowment of the Arts in Washington. Donald serves as the Passamaquoddy Historic Preservation Officer for the Passamaquoddy tribe in eastern Maine. Books by Donald include Remember Me, Toma Joseph's Gift to Franklin Roosevelt, A Visit to Our Ancestors' Place. This is my favorite. Donald is a father of 11 children, grandfather of 20 grandchildren, and has one great-grandchild. That might not be accurate anymore. There could be another one. And in the film, Donald was our cultural and historical consultant. He is also one of the voices in the documentary story that you just watched. He also participated in many, many reviews of The Rough Cut. And next is Brian Joseph Francis. He's an experienced producer, director, and writer, and he was involved with a really interesting Aboriginal television production called Eastern Tide, which is one of the ways I got to know Brian. It's based on the life and times of Atlantic Canada's Mi'kmaq people. Brian lives in Elsipogtog First Nation in New Brunswick. He has directed feature documentaries for the CBC of Canada and the National Film Board of Canada, including Sacred Sundance and Circle of Justice. Brian is also a Mi'kmaq interpreter in the he's the first, Mi'kmaq interpreter in the Canadian House of Commons. For the film, Brian was our Canadian First Nation director. He brought us in contact with the many beautiful people that you have met in this story. And he also was our Mi'kmaq translator and interpreter for the interviews that were done in the native language of the Mi'kmaq people. And lastly is my good friend Alex Nicholas, who I can't say I get too personal, but Alex really opened his arms to our film crew before we actually had full permission to record their stories. He has been the harvest supervisor with the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company for 27 years. In prior years, he himself was a blueberry raker. He is a member of the Passamaquoddy tribe, and he and his family reside at Motacomicook, or better known in English as Indian Township. He was the chief of police for the public security and safety department of his community for many, many years. Alex is another voice in the actual story, which you just watched. And we are very pleased to have his knowledge about the wild blueberry harvest, the rakers, and the company tonight. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, Nancy, Camille, Donald, Brian, Alex, for all joining us this evening. So I'm going to start off with a couple of questions that I think anybody on the panel would be welcome to address. First question, I know at the end of the film, it's mentioned what happened during like the 2017, 2018 harvest seasons. When exactly did this film come together? What season or seasons of blueberry harvesting were you filming?
Alex was at the harvest the last 2 years, so he might be able to answer that the best. Do you want to repeat it?
Yeah, what seasons of blueberry harvesting did we see covered in the film? Was it one particular season, or was it more than one, do you think?
Oh, I know what you mean. It's the month of August. Right, Alex?
Yeah, our season typically starts, for me, it starts the last week of July and usually goes through to the end of August. People start showing up the first week of August. Once we establish it, it continues. And I think her question may be in regards to when this film was made. Nancy, and I think some of that started probably for you. I want to say for me, it was prior to us not raking berries, which probably would have been in 15, 16, and 17. Is that your question?
Yes, yeah. What years are we looking at?
Sorry about that. Yeah, well, I actually did research in 2013, and the woman Donna Sillaboy I met at the Rakers Center, which was a place where rakers go to acquire food, healthcare, information about the harvest school. And Donna invited me to go up to tribe camp, and that's the year I actually met Alex, but I didn't do any videotaping. So our first filming year was 2014.
And it continued through 2017?
Yeah, 19 actually.
2019, okay.
Yeah, we did some interviews in 2018 with Brian up in Nova Scotia, and with Melvin at El Sabucto in New Brunswick, and Brian Altvader we interviewed in 2019.
Very good. Now, this question, I would say, Donald, Brian, Alex, when we think about, so this film, is something we're looking at blueberry harvesting with the Wabanaki, in the past, within the past decade or so. But how far back does this tradition go?
Well, the tradition of harvesting blueberries goes back since the first blueberry, because that's been part of our livelihood. It's been part of our food source. So I think commercially, the big fields probably started in the early 1900s, and we've sent community members to the blueberry fields. From our Passamaquoddy community, it's about 45 minutes to an hour to the large blueberry fields. But we've harvested forever. It might have been small family groups, large family groups.
Brian might be able to add to that.
Yes, like Donald said, it's historically we've harvested blueberries forever. It was actually the first gift from the creator to the Wabanaki people. More recent times, I would say that was my mother in the film. She actually said that she remembers when she was a young girl going to harvest blueberries. She's 96 years old now, so would have been in the around the 30s, I guess. More recently, my experience with commercial blueberry harvesting, it's ever since I can remember. Since I was I like to say I was born in Maine, because my birthday is in August, right in the prime of blueberry season. And I think my mother said that was the only season that she missed because she was pregnant. But ever since I can remember, I've spent every summer in Maine, and I still go for just because I need to go. It's a part of my my cycle of life, I guess. And in the late, maybe early 60s, late 60s, we primarily went down towards Sedgwick, Maine, Blue Hill, Maine, Stockton Springs, I think. And it wasn't the same as the way the industry is up in Cherryfield and Columbia Falls. It's a total different environment. But it was a way of life for a brief period of time. And I often compare it to kind of going back to our nomadic instincts, our nomadic ways, because we travel. And back then we had to travel. It was an all-day journey because we would be in back of trucks and dirt roads, and people would go there for 5 weeks. They would leave the community late July and come back after Labor Day, and then they would do it all over again for potato harvest in September. So it's really a huge part of our year. In our community, everybody looks forward to that period of time. It became an annual event, and it's a really special memory, I guess. I hope it's not just a memory now, but if it does end, it's really an end to a very beautiful tradition.
Alex, how long have you and your family been involved in blueberry harvesting?
I've been raking blueberries probably since I was right around 15. I actually started as what they call a field boss, was in 97. Prior to that, being a raker, when I became a law enforcement officer, once the company was established, we were brought up during the harvest as security. Typically, our job was to maintain public order, keep peace, and protect the people that was there, and protect our lands, our blueberries, from people coming in and possibly trying to steal berries or cause problems. You got to keep in mind up there, on the Blueberry Barrens. The camp, some of them had 15 cabins, some of them had 20 cabins. It's like a settlement. Once the people came in and they landed, that was home for them for whether it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even a month. The company has done great things over the period of time. I can remember back when we didn't have any in-ground irrigation. It was all above ground irrigation. Prior to that, it was all nature. The company has progressed to becoming, like Brian said earlier in the film, probably one of the top providers of quality blueberries, especially in this part of the state. I think that the culture involved with it has been there for a long time. Our people have migrated, whether it was fishing, hunting, trapping. They bartered, they did what they could. For me, in my time, going and having the ability to rake, before I got introduced to our fields, I used to rake for small growers, people that were up in the Robbinston area, Charlotte, Maine, and different areas. So there's a lot more to this, I want to say, history involved with the tribe, which a lot of the lands in the video that you're seeing, or the film that was done here, that was all land that was acquired through the Land Claim Settlement Act, the 1980 Land Claim Settlement Act.
Paula, one of our audience members, has a question, and this was something that I had been wondering too. Did the hand harvest take place this year? What was the impact that the pandemic had, if any, on blueberry harvesting in 2020?
I think that might be something I think it would be appropriate.
Alex, you want to speak to that first?
I was going to say, if Brian was on, I thought that the manager, that might be something that would be for him to answer.
Sure,
if
Brian.
not, I can answer that.
Okay.
Brian, about the Mi'kmaq, how did they feel about not coming? How did they feel about not coming down, Brian, this year because the border was closed?
Did you mean me or Altivator?
The rakers from El Sabucto and Eskasoni.
Yes, but
How did they react to it?
It was a tremendous blow. It was a tremendous blow to the tradition, I guess. It really, like Hubert was saying, it was really devastating. Just the idea of not being able to pack your bags and go. And for a lot of people, it was a significant source of income for their families. That most families would go there to rake for school clothes and supplies and that type of thing. And it's an annual thing that people counted on, and nobody ever could even imagine that the borders would be closed and that we couldn't cross, even with our well, I guess we could cross with our dual citizenship, and but a lot of people just chose not to, because you would have to quarantine when you come back. You'd have to self-isolate, and it just disrupted, I guess, the flow of a person's annual cycle, I guess. So it was a tremendous impact within our communities, and it was. We're hoping that everything settles down and everything goes back to the way it was. I mean, we're creatures of habit, I guess, and we're used to those things that revolve, and hopefully that happens. Everything comes back to normal soon.
And
I think
I
if
think
I,
Alex can tell you what happened to the harvest, actually. It really affected the harvest, I believe.
yes, if I may,
Alex.
I can add to that. And I'm not sure if I understood her question exactly, if it was for me or if it was for Brian. And yes, I was, Brian, I was referencing Brian Altvader. But if I may, this year, they did have hand raking. They did not last more than a week for a lot of different reasons. For one, because of COVID, they didn't open up the camps. None of the camps was open. So it was open to tribal members, only people that they felt comfortable that, you know, the social distancing and all that was a very small crew. They weren't successful enough in raking the amount of berries that was up there. So there were several things that impacted getting the harvest up in an appropriate time this year. And COVID was the biggest, I want to say havoc with that. Other than that, I can't tell you exactly what the total poundage was. Mother Nature was not very good this year. Is that what your question was?
Yeah, I think they were asking sort of in general, you know, what impact had the pandemic had on the harvesting this year. Donald, can you elaborate at all on what impact that has had, like for the company?
Well, the company wasn't able to produce the poundage. I think from our community, some families went out and harvested for individual families, like they're always allowed to do. They go out and, but for the company, what happens, the company produces the berries and they go to a processor. I noticed one of the questions was, why aren't the berries in the market? The processor will package them and freeze them and then sell them. So that's probably why you don't see Passamaquoddy blueberries with the label out there. It's a very expensive business to get into. You have to have warehouses with refrigerators, large refrigerators, to keep them. And you've got to have contracts all over the country, all over the world pretty much. I think maybe about 15 years ago, we did have a small contract with, I think it was the Army, and they bought 1 million pounds directly from the tribe.
Donald, I'm going to say a short thing, and maybe you or Alex can elaborate on it since you would have more firsthand knowledge. But I did speak to Brian Altvader, the president of the board, because I had read in the Quoddy Tides a small article saying that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was awarding grants for something called Value Added Producer Grant. And the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company is receiving a nice sum, $250,000 to develop, this is what it reads, expand production, marketing, and sales of branded blueberries. And Brian said, go ahead and, you know, tell everybody that, because he wasn't able to join us tonight. And I don't know if Donald, you might have any other information, but this would be huge. Branded means that we would know it's from the either Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company, native picked, local, however they choose to make a brand. I don't know, they're probably developing that.
Over the years, we've been talking with casino tribes across pretty much North America about buying our product, our blueberries, and it hasn't gone past the marketing stage yet because of all the revenue that you have to have these warehouses developed. So it hasn't gone that far. And this is the right direction to get that value added for the product.
Okay. But it's something that's hopeful.
Jocelyn commented, and she had a question that Donald did just address in part. She said, it's sad to think of this tradition of hand harvesting and the gathering of the tribes lessening, or that it could end, and that she expressed that she wanted to support native harvest by purchasing the blueberries. How could she do that, or how could she show her support for this company or for this tradition?
Well, I think once we do get to the branding process, look for the name in the market.
Mm-hmm.
To buy blueberries from our producers. That's about it.
Somebody
If I may,
asked,
if I can
Uh,
add to that, Nancy, just so the audience understands that the company was contracted with Cherryfield Foods. Cherryfield Foods was the one that handled the marketing of the berries. We were contracted with them for X number of pounds of berries, and the tribe got paid for that. Donald is exactly right in regards to the trucking and the freezing and the processing of the berries. The tribe presently doesn't have the facilities to do that. As you know, this was the last year of the contract that we had with Cherryfield Foods. I don't feel personally that it's my position without authorization or permission from the board or the company to make any further statements in regards to any new contracts that may be out there, and as to who we're going to be contracted with for extending out our blueberries worldwide. So I hope that gives a little bit more clarity to it.
Yes, thank you.
that was a great answer, Alex and Donald. Actually, I think that I've received different requests of how can I buy wild blueberries from the Passamaquoddy. After people see the film, they were at Camden International Film Festival, and after the premiere that we had for the film with the Wabanaki communities, and I think that that's going to be a really big step, is for the general public to realize they can purchase the blueberries that come exactly from First People of Canada and Native Americans for the United States. There's a real movement for that kind of, like the hands that picked that idea, local, organic, of course. That takes a separate kind of processing, which I was told, I don't think it was in the film, but they do have some acres of acreage of organic berries. But the problem is there isn't a processor to separate and take those in a unique way. So all these years that they were achieving organic, those berries are mainstreamed into the whole stuff you see on the berries you see on those big trucks. They're not separated. So that would be a different direction for not only the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company, but any small grower to move towards that market.
Right, I can share that the board and the company has set X number of acreages aside for organic blueberries as part of the process with the grant involved here and the marketing side of it. Prior manager Daryl Newell, he had done some outreach, and I want to say worldwide, on of trying to market the tribe's blueberries. They had established a label, and I really can't quote as to what exactly happened with that process, but I just think it was something that's been looked at prior to the new administration and the new management board. But they are working on that, and we'll see. I think they were talking, it was a 3-year period before you could even get certified with organic blueberries. in order to even to identify them as being organic. So I think we're in that phase of it now, this upcoming year, the next harvest. So you'll probably be hearing more about that, and they're working with some very good people, people that specialize in marketing, and you know, other worldwide entities. So it's happening.
Thank you. Joyce says, farmers markets and co-ops often offer a good price for local producers. Have those avenues been available and used by the tribes in terms of selling blueberries?
As of this year, I believe that they will be moving in that direction. Yes.
So I don't know if you could speak, maybe this is a question we could start with, like Nancy, Camille, and Brian, although I would say any of you could share your thoughts or your answer. But how did, exactly, like, how did this film like first come about? How did it all come together? Where did the idea come from? What was kind of the process of getting it started?
Well, I think you mentioned I made another film about agricultural labor because my family lives in Western New York and the economy depends on apple harvesting. And in the process of working with the Hispanic population over and Caribbean population over probably 10 years or more, I was very aware of migrant streams. People would come from watermelons in Georgia or from cherries in Michigan, and they would move here for what we have a much longer harvest, a 2-month harvest of apples. So in 2012, I was out just taking some photos at one of my favorite farms with people I know very well. And they said, "You got to meet these people from Honduras. They're amazing. They just came from Maine." And I go, "What? They came from Maine?" Yeah, then I went and met them, and the lead crew boss spoke good English, and he explained to me that they had just finished the blueberry harvest in Washington County, Maine, cherry field, and now they were here to pick apples. Then they were going to go back to Portland, where they had apartments that they lived in. And then they were going to go up to Cherryfield and Harrington and do wreath making. And then they were going to go back to Honduras for 2 months. And then they would come back to the States and start all over again in a different state. Their home base was Portland, Maine. And so that was it. I was out of here. The next year I was up to Maine, and I said, I'm going to find out about this. And I actually documented Cherryfield Foods. They gave me permission, and I started just filming myself. And that's when I got to this point of, went to the Rakers Center, which is a support area for agencies to help the migratory farm workers from Canada and Maine and New Hampshire. And that's where Donna Sillaboy said, "Why don't you come up?" I talked to her. "Yeah, where are you?" "Oh, I'm up here in T19. I don't know how to get there." T19, you go Epping Road, and then you turn there and you go right when you get to the big camp. And so I found my way up there, and it was pretty overwhelming. And I don't know if Alex remembers, but I actually met a lot of the people that year. And then it took quite a while. I'll stop talking in a minute, but it took quite a while to get permission. And I'll tell you that if you go into documentary filmmaking, don't have an agenda, no timeline, just like have fun, get to know people, see what they care about, what their issues are, and slowly you'll get to a place where you lose your identity, not your identity, but you lose what you thought was supposed to happen and start seeing what they think is supposed to happen. And that's how it went. And I tell you, if you see Alex here and you see Donald and you see Brian, none of this is possible without meeting people who are both leaders in their community and also just common people who want their story told. And Brian I met through his brother Hubert, who's an amazing songwriter and singer. And he invited me to New Brunswick, and I met Brian at a opening ceremony for the Dieppe Farmers Market. He may not remember that. So that's how that happened. Nancy's story happened.
Camille, how did you become involved in the film?
Yeah, I was actually on break from my semester at film school, and my professor for documentary studies reached out to me and asked if I was familiar with Washington County, Maine at all, knowing that I was from Maine. And it turned out that Nancy was working on this project about a 5-minute drive from where I grew up, and we got connected, and I got to help bring so I came along towards the end of the production and have been helping out, bringing the film to everybody.
She did that interview with Hubert at the camp where he says the harvest is canceled. That was Camille running the camera.
Camille, what do you think an experience like this has taught you as someone who's sort of just at the beginning of a filmmaking career? What do you think you learned through this process that was the most valuable?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think that Nancy just said it best, that the most important thing when you're working as specifically a nonfiction filmmaker is to remember that the stories that you're being given are not that you're not at the center of them, and that it's kind of your job to follow and listen and learn and always be open. And it's been a wild year to release a documentary, so we have also just been learning what a strong community Maine has for supporting film and story and artists, and to make sure to reach out to the people who are going to be the most impacted by the stories that you have to share.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
This question, I think I would say, is for Alex, Brian, and for Donald. What, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. It comes across in the film that, certainly this is this blueberry harvest, the hand raking, the coming together of all these people, that it's a really important aspect of Wabanaki culture. At least that's the sense that I get from the film. What role would you say this harvest plays when it comes to the continuing traditions of Wabanaki culture, with sort of cementing that culture within the communities? Is this, I'm making an assumption here that this still is really important. Is that true, and why?
I'm not sure Donald's still there, but Brian could start in on that a little bit for the Mi'kmaq, how it feels to him.
Well, the subject of the blueberry harvest is really one that's dear to my heart. It's really part of who I am. It's always been very, very special to me. All my childhood memories revolve around summer in Maine. Later on, it was we started working when we were like 10 years old. That was before child labor laws and what have you. But it was just a part of life. And what's interesting is that as I become further removed from it, I guess, when I would go down to Maine in the summer, I would run into people who knew, who remembered my father, who remembered our family going there. We would visit field leaseholders. And as time progressed, a lot of these people were passing on. Later on, I would run into people who would remember the Mi'kmaq coming to Maine to harvest blueberries. Later on, I would be running into their children who would hear their parents talk about the native people from Canada that would come and harvest blueberries. And what's kind of I guess what's kind of sad is the fact that, like, nowadays, there's hardly anybody that you would run into who would know of the Mi'kmaq that come from New Brunswick to Maine to harvest blueberries, unless we told them. That's why this film is important, I think.
Mm.
But there's a deeper story to this. There's a real people story, and it's really an important part of our history of the Mi'kmaq people who willingly went to harvest and earn a living. That was so hard that even the locals stopped doing it. Even the local people in Maine stopped doing it. But we went every year. Every year we would go for 4 or 5 weeks, and we would live in people call them tar paper shacks, but for us they were like it was like a 5-star inn, because it was a social aspect that was really the driving force for a lot of people that went there. We would have like little social gatherings in the evenings, campfires, and people would cook together. They would share food. They would wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, rake all day, and then do it all over again. So it was really a very, very unique and special event, I would say, for our people. And I think it's important for people to know that. And I think that's probably the fondest, I guess, part of my life is when I was in Maine harvesting blueberries.
And I think for me too, that's one of the things that comes across really strong in the film. I think the parts that I really like are those seeing families like cooking together at night, or the kids playing basketball together, those community and family connections, and sort of just like people hanging out together and socializing and looking out for each other. I think I think is it Jody Dana who says at one point in the film, I get to work with my family. I get to be around them all day. I think that's one of the things that comes across the strongest in this film. Alex or Donald, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I believe the act of gathering and harvesting is linked with our DNA, because our ancestors follow that pattern of gathering, hunting, doing things together as a family. And so I think that DNA linkage is really powerful within the First Nations people.
I feel like that when you start in to know one tradition, that you can cross over to understanding what all of this seasonal existence might have been, and in the older families, including Brian, who has a lot of memories that I think are interesting that I may not have heard as directly said. I think you can get a feeling about our own anthropology. And even if my skin is Caucasian, Northern European, if I look at my DNA, Donald, I find Sami, which is Finnish, which is where my father was born in Russia, and my grandfather is Finnish. So, okay, who were the Samis? They didn't have caribou, they had reindeer, but they were doing about the same thing in Northern Europe. They had to move around. So I feel something when I learn from you more directly. I have a kind of a DNA vibration about someplace in my own DNA where, it's August. I better get my basket and go out and find those blueberries so I have them this winter. I mean, there's like some kind of direct connection when you get out there on those barrens and you see those blueberries and you go, I need those blueberries. I wanted to share that with Donald and Brian and Alex.
Sarah asks, she says the film has a reference to immersion language programs for young people. How has the blueberry harvest fostered opportunities to revive and share indigenous languages among the Wabanaki tribes? I think that's a good question.
I think Donald knows about immersion languages, and maybe Brian too. It's 2 different languages.
Well, when families are doing things together, they're learning new activities and they're sharing new words in the language. A word that you might not hear if you're not picking blueberries or picking apple or potatoes. If you're doing the activity, the word stays in your mind a little bit stronger if you're doing the activity and speaking in the native language.
It's like a reinforcing effect.
Right. We had in our community, we had a language school for children 3 to 5. And we had linguists there that sort of taught the teachers how to reinforce the language by doing the activities. And over the years, that memory is in your mind forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes that connection makes it stronger.
Just to add to that, I think Dando jo onnuizin, namushpal wajia dandelugan, wajia maamiga wiktu. Ta wajia maamiga wiktu na dawa na wufti. Na nega mawai bema uksiga, bemigana uksiga. Kasi nega mawai bemi indu. Na ganjan na mushpagagi na mukik dandeli onnuizin. Basically, our language and our culture stems from the land and the actions that we do upon that land, and that's the basis of our language. The Wabanaki people, the Wabanaki member tribes, I believe at one time were one, and I believe our languages were the same one. I spoke to a Passamaquoddy elder a few years ago, and I could understand the words that he was saying. So it's only history that's divided us and has changed the I don't know what the word is, but the dialect, I guess. And that's so we're on the verge of losing all that. See, and I think that's the only way we can recover that is immersion. The children need to be immersed in the language. And that's how we retain our identity. That's how we retain the culture. That's how we retain our connection to the earth. And that's very important for our educators to understand and to learn that that's our salvation. Otherwise, we become a memory down the road, 25, 50 years down the road. Are we going to have language speakers? So I think that's a key element that we have to work on.
Okay. Well, thank you all again. Oh, sorry.
I just,
Go ahead.
sorry. Wilalin Woliwan. Now maybe I can be corrected by Donald and Brian, but those are almost identical. One is Mi'kmaq and one is Passamaquoddy.
You got the thumbs up from
just
Donald
typed
there,
in.
so yeah, I think you did good. Well, I want to thank our panel again so much for their time and for sharing this information, sharing their experiences and their thoughts about this film and the stories that are told within. I want to thank the audience for participating. A couple of the comments that we've gotten from folks who didn't necessarily have a question, but who wanted to share what they thought. As someone said, but it's the first time watching this, I want to express my deep appreciation for all the information. It was well photographed, really inspirational. Someone else commented that they really like seeing the tradition of friendship that was portrayed in the film. The spiritual components they found very interesting. So this
great.
Had a lot of impact on the people we were able to share it with tonight. One last question, I guess, before we go is listening to these questions, these comments. What do you folks hope? What do you hope that anyone who sees this film might take away from it? We'll start with Nancy.
I hope they have a panel like this, because I have always felt that as film is a starting point for further conversation, and that whoever is in the audience will have a direction that they want to understand, whether it's spirituality, sovereignty. We didn't touch on that, but this group of people here would be very experienced. My internet connection is unstable, it says.
That's okay, you're still coming in okay.
Okay. There's a lot going on with sovereignty right now. And I think what I feel from these questions about what's happening with the blueberries and the branding, I feel that is pointing to the sovereign nature that the Passamaquoddy and Mi'kmaq desire, and also what we desire for them. So I feel that they can get a sense of that from the film.
Camille, how about you? Oh, I'm sorry, Donald, go ahead. You were going to speak.
That's okay.
I would just hope that people reflect on the land that they live on and the traditions that belong to that land.
Camille, Donald, go ahead.
Well, I hope this film, the information from it, gets across to show that we as Native people are still here. We're still living on the land. We're still following the ways of our ancestors by this type of gathering. And hearing the language in the film, people will understand the diversity within this region of the world and how important it is.
Yeah. Brian?
Well, I'd like to think that the audience would remember who we are and that we are still here. In the Inuit culture, they have, you've all seen those little stone markers that it's called an Inukshuk. And you ask them what it means, and they'll say that, so they'll know we were here. And I think that this film could be similar to that, so that down the road, people will watch this film and say that we contributed a lot to the industry, to Maine's economy, and not, it was never primarily for the money. It was always more for the social aspect of it, and that we willingly helped Maine's economy, and we would do it again, and because it's a collaboration. We have something that you need, and you have something that we need. So I think that's it's part of the contemporary history of our people, and I think that's I hope that they take away some sort of appreciation of the fact that we were here.
Alex, how about you?
Well, for me, I just want to say, I think that I hope our audience understands the historical side to the Wabanaki people and the alliance with all the tribes, Wabanaki tribes, sister tribes from Canada, tribes in Maine, Penobscots, Maliseet, Mi'kmaqs. The culture, as time evolved, the Passamaquoddy tribe acquired these lands. The Passamaquoddy tribe reached out to its sister tribes with the opportunity to keep that migration and that alliance going. It was easy for them to come in because they realized that they get together with their sister tribes and get to know one another even more personally, singing, dancing, respecting what opportunity that they had. For me, when I look at this film, that's how deep it is. It goes back to time before there was any treaties developed, time before there was any strict restrictions put in place, whether it was fishing, hunting, trapping, no matter what it was. That was the life of the Native American people. And I think that more importantly, you have to understand the culture of each community and the culture of the Wabanaki people and the spiritual connection to it, and how it was miraculous. At one time, there was over 1,000 people from all these tribes that migrated to Maine to assist the Passamaquoddy people with fostering their land and bringing in the crop. That's how it all started. And it went from one generation to the next generation. During my time, I was into like a third generation. When families came in, they just didn't come in with the ones that could work the fields. They came in as a whole. There was no separation. You can call them clans, you can call them families, you can call them whatever they want. And it was really unique for me because I don't speak my language fluently, but my wife does. She's a teacher. She teaches the Passamaquoddy language. She teaches in the schools. She teaches in the community. When the people all arrived out there, you got to remember, you're talking 5 different campsites, and most of them had anywhere between 150 to 250 people in them camps. They endured a lot of different hardships. A lot of times it wasn't about the money involved or the revenue involved. There was a spiritual connection. And, you know, with that being said, I hope that the audience understands that that's the heartbeat of this. That's the soul to all this, is that it's given the Wabanaki Alliance of People the opportunity to sustain that and maintain that. And I think when the company was cut off that year because of a contract, because they couldn't rake the berries, and then followed up by COVID. Yeah, that hurt. I can see where it's impacted a lot of communities, native communities. But you keep in mind, there was also a lot of non-tribal people that came in and joined in and worked the harvest with us also. It wasn't just all natives. 90% of it was, but there's always been that 10% of people from the county and from other states and other areas that came in, that commingled, that wanted to get to know and understand if they were welcomed. And when they were welcomed, they felt like there was a part of something that they'd never been a part of. So with that, I guess I'll allow you to close out or say whatever you have to say. So.
Thank you. Thank you all again so much for joining us this evening, for spending some time with us, and for answering these questions and sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it. If you would like to learn more about the film, you can visit the website www.voicesfromthebarrens.com. If you would like to learn more about some upcoming programs with Maine Historical Society, or to see programs of recordings of past programs, you can visit our website, mainehistory.org. Are there any of you, any other upcoming screenings of other films or programs or resources that you would like to share with the audience before we go? It's okay if it's okay if there isn't. This is your opportunity. If there was anything else you'd like to point people towards.
Well, Camille just put the website into the chat window for the panelists and attendees. And I would add to that we're very active on Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram, and we try to answer the questions and comments all the time. We have 2 major film festivals that are Indigenous and Native American themed, both on the West Coast. And they both open on Friday, and we are included in a subcategory of documentary in both of them called Food Sovereignty. So I think it's very interesting to see, goes back to what you're saying about the takeaway and the audience. So the programmers of these next 2 festivals consider that this film is about food sovereignty, and I'll go with that. I mean, they're marketing their festival and they're putting films together. So there's one very interesting one called Gather that I encourage you to see and to tell other people about our film, because we're booked with 2, so you buy a ticket and you get to see both. The tickets are generally between $6 and $10 for a film, which is about the same as going to a movie theater, by the way, unless you buy an all pass for a festival. Right. So, I mean, that's where we are with the film. We're going to do small screenings around Maine. And we have one coming up with the University of New Brunswick, we just have found out about, for the end of the month. And eventually the film will be available, I hope, for streaming through an educational distributor later in the spring or summer. So that's what we're doing. It's a lot of work for 2 people.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you.
Or 3.
And good luck with the film. Good luck with the work that you're all doing. And again, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donald, Brian, and Alex.